over the Birdsville Caravan Park and Billabong as well. And then the green of the Birdsville Town Common and the Diamantina River flood out area. Coming around to our right, on the right hand side, you'll be able to see the Birdsville Bronco Branding and Gymkhana grounds out down on the right hand side where the cattle yards are. Across the road from that is also the Birdsville Golf Course, so you can see there's no green fairways out here. We've got enough greenery on the Diamantina River. It's all sand fairways and oiled greens. So we are part of the Outback Queensland Masters Series here in Birdsville, which is taking place in late June, and it's a really fun event. Previously, for the opening event, they held a $1 million hole-in-one competition, which I suppose thankfully for the organisers didn't get one, but this year and subsequent years there's a $10,000 hole-in-one prize up for that. Down on our left-hand side is the road out to Big Red, and it heads away from us a little bit and then cuts back in towards us. It's predominantly bitumen now, which is really good, bitumen the whole way. A lot of that is due to the fact that we have about 14,000 people that come out here annually to the Big Red Bash Music Festival, on top of all the traffic that we get to the Simpson Desert. So that Big Red Road often spends a lot of time being severely corrugated, and the decision was made to seal it for that 35k. around, and then we'll be turning around and swapping that over so everyone gets a good view. So Big Red is obviously aptly named because it is big and red. It's the largest sand dune in the Simpson Desert, and it really marks the start of the dune country in Simpson Desert. The Big Red itself is 30 metres tall, and as I said, it's pretty much the first of 1,113 dunes to cross on a Simpson Desert crossing. So we just got the road going over Little Red out on our left-hand side, and Big Red out on our right-hand side. So Little Red obviously affords the opportunity to not have the pressure to make it over Big Red. At the top of Big Red, we call it the Big Red Bowl. So that's the big open flat area that you'll see on the top of Big Red once I lift the wind. And that's where everyone parks their cars and watches the sun set of an evening. And you can see down here on the right that there are a few options of tracks to take your four-wheel drive on to try and make it up the top of Big Red. The flat open country on the other side there is that Big Red Bash site. Have only just done a small area of work so far. They've got a bit more to go to clear the prickle bush and vegetation extremely sparsely vegetated, but the vegetation that we do have out here is actually extremely rich in nutrients, and is extremely good for the cattle. There's also a lot of moisture in some of the vegetation, and the salt bush and that sort of thing. And they say that Channel Country cattle do have a unique flavour in their beef because of the vegetation and the feed that they are generally on. So they don't need a lot of it to look good. I'm sure you've seen some cattle on your travels, and I'd be surprised if you saw any that weren't looking pretty that shiny and healthy. Latest customs coal established trees. That's part of the Eyre Creek flood-out area. Last year we had a pretty significant flood event in the Georgina and Mulligan river catchment area, which feeds into the Eyre Creek up near Missouri. And that was quite a large flood event, one that hadn't been seen for a number of years. We had a kind of similar event in 2009, but not as big, and then prior to that was back in 1974 with those famous 74 floods. So last year was pretty special, and that did create pools of water throughout the dune country out to the right there in that overflow country of the Eyre Creek. It did cut off the Simpson Desert, unfortunately, though, for a lot of those that had planned their Simpson Desert crossing earlier in the year. The desert didn't open until much later in the year by the use of the Eyre Creek bypass, and it was in fact an extended bypass route, not the normal bypass, and new routes had to be created to traverse the depth of the water and the strength of the water. This year the Eyre Creek has had a little run again, but the water has not been a significant flood at all, so it's actually remained contained within the one little main channel of the Eyre Creek, which has allowed the Simpson Desert to stay open and just use the normal bypass route, which is pretty easily navigated. I went out yesterday and we crossed the Eyre Creek in the new pub recovery truck, and that was good fun. As you can see, this Eyre Creek country is all running down in the southerly direction that we're headed in, and the reason for that is obviously this is all trying to make its way down to one common goal, which is Lake Eyre further down in South Australia. So this is all part of the greater Lake Eyre Basin catchment area, which takes up 1/6 of Australia's land mass. So it's an extremely large area. The main contributors to Lake Eyre are the Georgina Mulligan catchment area, which the Eyre Creek is part of. The Diamantina River, obviously, which runs through Birdsville or past Birdsville, and then the Cooper Creek, which is a bit further to the south and enters Lake Eyre on its eastern shoreline. This sort of Diamantina and Georgina Eyre Creek catchment area, once it does its thing from way up almost 1,000 kilometres where it originates, it comes past Birdsville and it heads for this common area that we're heading to, which is the Goyder Lagoon. So the Goyder Lagoon is just basically a really flat open area of about 8,000 square kilometres, where the country is that flat that the channels have been able to break into thousands of fibrous finger-like channels and create a beautiful wetland area. So that'll start coming into view ahead of us as we just get a little bit further south. Those vast distances. Out here, cattle are mustered by helicopter. Sometimes the use of fixed-wing aeroplanes as well in some of the more flat open country, because fixed-wing aircraft are just a bit cheaper to run than helicopters. But also stockmen, or ringers as we like to call them nowadays, on motorbikes that are able to get across the country a lot quicker than by horseback. Traditionally, a lot of these places still use horses where they can. There's a lot of good horsemen and old stockmen out here that love to use horses. A bit quieter restoration, but it was sold off unfortunately when Estiman and Co was disbanded and broken up. A lot of the Estiman and Co properties were bought by Gina Reinhardt, but Anna Creek Station, Gina Reinhardt did have some foreign investments helping her or involved in that purchase, and Anna Creek Station had to be cut out of that purchase due to the fact that a large proportion of it is covered by the Woomera Defence Zone. Anna Creek Station was then purchased by the Williams family, who are a lovely local pastoral family in South Australia with a number of other properties, so it fell into extremely good hands. Back to Clifton Hill Station, and it is also owned by Australian pastoralist families, traditional families in the pastoral game. It's in a partnership between Viv Oldfield's family and Donington Fellows family, and they run it in conjunction with a number of other properties, New Crown Station, South Dallas Springs. They've also recently purchased Mungarani Station as well. They also own Pandy Pandy Station, which we'll be flying over on our way back into Birdsville later. So interesting for a couple of years to put together a good proper muster. They weren't able to get any trucks out here to be able to truck any cattle, so they didn't focus their time on trying to do a count of how many clean skin cattle were out here, because it was just a bit of a futile exercise. They did reach the point that they were ready to sell the property though, so they did a bit of a deal and offered the property to market for a $30 million price tag, with a sweetener that there was probably roughly around 10,000 head of clean skin cattle available for the new owners. So the deal was done, and Viv Oldfield and Donny Costello purchased the property, and we're just coming over that boundary now into Clifton Hill Station. They purchased the property, and once they were able to actually get it out here and start mustering and get all these clean skin cattle in, they found that there were actually about 24,000 head of unaccounted for cattle. So essentially, the cattle that they were able to turn off the property helped pay for the majority of the property, particularly the way the cattle prices were at the time. So a pretty decent deal for the new purchasers. Start to go down a little bit lower to get us at about 500 feet as we enter the outskirts of the Goyder Lagoon area, and you'll start to see a pretty drastic change compared to the Sanjay country that we have been flying over. You can see it flattens right out. There's water caught up in all the vibrant little channels, and the greenery is just absolutely spectacular. So Clifton Hill Station really is a amazing property. It gets the benefit of pretty much the majority of the Goyder Lagoon area, and after a big flood like we've had, the Goyder Lagoon can hold speed for an extraordinary amount of time. You'll start to see lots of cattle dotted out around the place, as well as some bird life as well. Majority of the water that comes through this area, particularly this year, was from the Diamantina River. The Diamantina catchment area was flooded predominantly by the tropical cyclone Kirrily that came through earlier this year. It came across the coast and headed inland, and then basically parked itself inland and just sat over the top of the catchment area for they describe it in those sorts of terms. All these fibrous channels look like veins pumping through the heart, and this really is the heart of the Channel Country in its most glorious form at the moment. At times get to see this beautiful contrast between the green of the Goyder Lagoon and then the rich red of the Gibber country around here. We're just off the northern side of the Sturt Stony Gibber Desert. Inside track, which has been closed for a long time. The Birdsville Inside track is just a shortcut off the Birdsville track, which in dry years allows to shave a few kilometres off of the trip down or up to Birdsville. It's been closed for a fair while after the numerous flooding events that we've just had of late, but obviously, as much as we've been really lucky with our recent flood events, there are some years out here where this looks completely different. It's all burnt off and brown, not a blade of grass to be seen, and looks pretty sad. Our last really severe drought out in this area here was in 2008, or just coming out of 2008. 2009 really turned the tables there with some good flooding to get this area back out of those slumps, but it can happen again, and we've had a number of good years now, so obviously everyone is always a bit wary and cautious of when the tables could turn again. And things can be pretty tough out here when that happens. It's interesting to note though, those really severe droughts do have long-lasting effects even after you do get some really good rains. And this area actually only got officially revoked its its drought status just this last week. You can see some water holes around us. So the Clifton Hill station folks come out here, and they do have jet skis on the property, and they do come out here and use any bodies of water they can find as recreational purposes. So you wouldn't think amongst the motorbikes and the cattle trucks and tractors and that sort of thing that any jet skis would be part of the machinery, but yeah, certainly out here they are. Even up at Pandy Station, they've got a couple of jet skis too, which at times they've used to come up the Diamantina River when access to Birdsville has been closed. They've used the jet skis to come and get some supplies, which you would think usually would be food and essentials, but usually it's actually beer. See a bit more of that contrast with that rich red of the stony Gibbon Desert against the backdrop here of the beautiful Goyna Lagoon area. In the late 1800s, in the 1880s, when the railhead in Maree was built, and the Birdsville track was essentially a track used to move cattle out of the Channel Country and down to that railhead in Maree. The track between Birdsville and Maree is 517 kilometres, and to enable cattle to be walked that far, there were bores drilled at 40 kilometre intervals along the Birdsville track to be able to shift cattle all the way, and drove them all the way down there to the railhead at Maree that headed down to Port Augusta. The Birdsville track was also obviously used by the famous Tom Cruise, and no, not the Mission Impossible Tom Cruise, but Tom Cruise with a K. He was the original first Outback mailman, and Tom Cruise used to make the trek up the Birdsville track, rain, hail or shine, in any sort of vehicle he could get to get up to Birdsville, and is famous for his pioneering efforts in that regard. established in the 1880s or 1870s. Sydney Kidman, obviously, as I mentioned earlier, he's a prominent name in the area for pioneering and basically starting a bit of a cattle empire in the cattle country. Birdsville was also obviously established way back then as a township. Birdsville was originally called Diamantina Crossing, being on the Diamantina River, and there's a couple of stories about how Birdsville could have gotten its name. So the one story says that Robert Frew, who was one of the early cattlemen out here, was obviously shocked at how many birds were out here in the middle of nowhere, and for that reason changed it from Diamantina Crossing to Birdsville. They say in about 1881. But then there's also a story that Bert, who had a store in Birdsville and was trying to get something brought up to him, had the address for Bert's Field, his store, incorrectly interpreted as Birdsville, and then the name stuck. So no one's really been able to come to the bottom of where the origins of Birdsville, the name of the town, ever came from. all from Birdsville all the way down to where this water ultimately ends up in Lake Eyre. So Birdsville's about 50 metres above sea level roughly, and Lake Eyre in its lowest point is 15.2 metres below sea level. So not a lot of fall for the distance really. Belt Bay being the lowest point below sea level in the whole of Australia at 15.2 metres. Obviously it plateaus out here for a large area before it continues on its journey. We are heading back up to the northeast of the Goyder Lagoon area to find the main channel of the Diamantina River before it starts to spread out into this area, and we're going to follow that channel back up all the way back up into Birdsville and past Pandy Station Homestead. Breaking up as it enters into the Goyder Lagoon area. coming back again. This particular live stream that off the right hand side of our nose is actually the very southern continuation of what then becomes Big Red. alongside the banks of the Diamantina River here, so also have the benefit of the green floodplain country as it is at the moment. Is the main hub for a lot of these properties, and it's also where everyone comes together to let their hair down and have a bit of fun when they do have the opportunity to do so. Obviously it's long days of hard work out here on these stations, but everyone bands together and you get a good sense of community when everyone comes into town, and they might come to the pub for a trivia night or in for a sporting event. We have cricket matches in town with the townsfolk versus the station folk, as well as your other more traditional events such as your gymkhanas and camp drafts and rodeos and that sort of thing. Truck that comes up from Adelaide off the Birdsville track to keep supplies up to all the stations along the Birdsville track, and then also ultimately ends up in Birdsville with all of our supplies for the Birdsville Hotel and Roadhouse and townsfolk. You can start to see the Birdsville track running alongside us out on the right hand side there now, and Pandy Station Homestead's actually coming up ahead of us, which will be on our left hand side. We try not to fly over them and annoy them too much on a regular basis, but like most of the stations out here, there's a fair bit of infrastructure as far as accommodation for all the staff is concerned. You know, there's a freestanding kitchen block and recreation area for the staff, and then obviously you've got your sheds and yards, airstrips as well. So Pandy Station's just coming up down on our left hand side, and it's got two airstrips. There's one that runs alongside the Birdsville track on the right hand side there, and then there's a much smaller little station strip for the local station, little Cessna 172, which is parked down there on our left hand side now.